Greetings, I'm Enraged Eggplant and welcome to Dungeons and GURPS. In this video I'll show you the process of converting a spell from D&D 3.5 to GURPS. Of course, this will be done in the context of the sorcery magic system, but it can be adapted easily to fit any other powers-based system. I believe that the Magic Missile spell from D&D is one of the best examples to use here. It is an iconic spell that will show you the difference in the depth of resolution between the systems. For reference, I'll post the SRD entry of the spell here. Step 1 is to discard all unnecessary information. In my opinion, this is the most important step. For example, this is an evocation spell with the force descriptor. Do we care about that? No, we don't. Just strike it out. Then this is a level 1 spell for sorcerers and wizards. This is only relevant to determine the power source. This is a wizard and sorcerer spell, so this is an arcane spell basically. So it should have the magical limitation. But level? GURPS does not have spell levels, so just ignore it. Components. We have verbal and somatic components. For a default sorcerer spell, this does not matter because there are the alternative ritual spells on page 9 of Sorcery book. However, if you disallow that rule or enforce incantations and or gestures, for example, I often do that for wizards, then these spell components will indicate the need to apply requires magic words and requires gestures limitations. Casting time, one standard action. D&D actions do not equal GURPS actions. The default sorcery spell takes a second to cast. You could vary it, of course, if needed. Then we have range, medium, 100 feet plus 10 feet per level. Just keep the range in mind without focusing too much on the exact number, and disregard scaling as it depends on something that does not exist in GURPS, caster level. Targets. Up to 5 creatures, no two of which can be more than 15 feet apart. Think about it this way. Yeah, it can target up to 5 creatures, but it also takes a standard action to cast. GURPS is more granular, so these 5 targets might have been 5 separate castings. Also, the number of missiles depends on the caster level, and we do not care about that. Our magic missile will target a single target. Duration, instantaneous. This is not a cyclic spell, so it just strikes one subject once. Saving throw, none. This might be necessary, but not for this spell. Spell resistance, yes. D&D spell resistance and GURPS magic resistance work very differently. I suggest to just disregard this. A missile of magical energy darts forth from your fingertip. This indicates that it will use the innate attack projectile skill and strikes its target, dealing 1d plus 4 damage. Never look at damage numbers. D&D damage is very different from GURPS damage, just like D&D hit points are very different from GURPS hit points. So you should simply disregard these numbers. Also, this allows you to make fewer conversions. For example, if you compare the D&D spell list with the spell index on my blog, you'll see that many spells are missing on the blog. But many of them actually are just equivalent to higher level versions of other spells. GURPS does not have spell levels, so by converting one D&D spell, you often convert multiple similar spells. Also, this damage will ignore armor in D&D, but armor works very differently in GURPS. So try to remove the idea of energy attacks ignoring armor from your mind, instead of slapping cosmic, irresistible attack plus 300% on every damaging spell. And this spell does force damage. And this is important. Force damage can affect incorporeal beings. So we should keep the effects insubstantial plus 20% enhancement in mind. The missile strikes unerringly, even if the target is in melee combat or has less than total cover or total concealment. Specific parts of a creature can be singled out. Inanimate objects are not damaged by the spell. This is where people normally layer several cosmic enhancements to make it not require a skill roll to hit, disallow active defenses, and everything like that. In my opinion, this is just silly. Close your eyes and distance yourself from the D&D mechanics. Imagine what the magic missile looks like and what it does judging by the description. It's a homing missile. So simply add the homing plus 50% modifier instead of doing all the cosmic silliness. This is probably the most important thing of converting content. Convert the concept, not the mechanics. And the last paragraph we just ignore. We have decided that this is represented by multiple castings in GURPS. Optionally, if you really want one casting to launch several magic missiles, you might want to add rapid fire enhancements, but I would advise against that. Rapid fire attacks in fantasy games are a bit troublesome, I should say. Okay, step 2. Find an appropriate advantage to serve at the base. Sometimes you might need more than one advantage. Most of the advantages can be found in the GURPS basic set. GURPS Powers also has a few new ones, but other than that, there's barely any new advantages in other books. There's only a few that are very unlikely to be what you're looking for. It is important to look at the mechanical effect of the ability and not on its description. Try to avoid create and control advantages, if there is an alternative. For example, if your ability creates an area of noise, use obscure, not create sound. Keep it simple. In our example, the magic missile deals damage, so we base it on innate attack. But which type? Force is a generic energy damage type in D&D. I suggest using crushing damage type for this spell. Step 3. Find appropriate modifiers. This might be more difficult than step 2, as there is a lot of new modifiers spread out across all the books. However, most, not all of them, are compiled in the GURPS Power-Ups 4 enhancements and GURPS Power-Ups 8 limitations. One limitation that is important and that is missing from GURPS basic set is reduced duration. You can find it in Power-Ups 8. If you can't find an appropriate limitation, then you probably can replicate it with accessibility. In our example, we have sorcery minus 15% as the power modifier, homing plus 50% to make it home in on the target, effects insubstantial plus 20% to represent force damage. Now let's consider the medium range. 100 feet is roughly equivalent to 33 yards. Range reduction is not very granular in GURPS, so the closest value we can get is 20 yards by applying reduced range 1/5 minus 20%. Since this is a homing attack, it moves at a speed equal to half damage range yards per second. Currently our half damage range is 2 yards. Let's increase it to 4 yards by applying increased half damage range times 2 plus 5%. Also, let's think about the concept of the spell. In D&D, it is supposed to be a weak spell, so instead of letting it scale, let's limit it to just 1d minus 1 crushing damage. And here's the end result. So you can take a look at it. I think it looks very simple, elegant, and preserves the concept. I don't know if it was helpful in any way, but here you go. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.